Hi, Tatyana here. Just want to give a heads up that this episode does come with trigger warnings. The Two Wise Girls podcast, our wonderful guests this episode, have a trauma-focused podcast focusing on Percy Jackson and bravely sharing their own stories. For this reason, we do discuss things such as child abuse, homelessness, etc. throughout the episode. So viewer discretion is advised. If you would like links to any resources or learn more about their podcast, all those links will be in the description below. But once again, have fun, but also take care of yourself. All right, see you in the next one. Bye. And welcome to the Melanated Wise Girl AfterShow, a mini Percy Jackson podcast covering the Percy Jackson and the Olympians television show. Today, we are continuing our journey on the Sea of Monsters, covering Percy Jackson Season 2. Oh, and right, I'm your host, Tatyana, aka your digital Melanated Wise Girl. And today, we have two special guests. I do have to give them credit for the fact that other than me and Percy Jackson himself, they hate Luke more than me, and that's fair game. And they also have an amazing podcast. So we're welcoming today Shannon and Mandy from the Two Wise Girls pod. Hey guys.
All the wise
Happy
girls
to
are
be
finally
on.
together.
Yes.
We've all came together, the wise girls of it all. Yes. Oh my God. I'm so excited to have you guys on. Especially since I think the first time, if I'm not mistaken, was like my Annabeth is Black video is that like I became aware of your podcast and stuff. And that was like a big thing for me. Was in the Percy Jackson and like fandom space. I think that pushed me to like people being like, oh, she exists. That's her.
Yeah.
It's her.
A long time like watcher of ours sent your video to me, and I was like, oh my God, what is this? And then I watched the whole thing and I'm like, this is so good. And I sent it to Mandy and followed you like everywhere. And when you started talking to me, I was like, why is she talking to me? Usually people don't want to talk to me. This is so nice.
No, it's so funny because with that video, I don't think it was funny. Like the day before I posted that, I didn't know what to expect, right? So it was nice, yeah. And now we're here. But before we get into it, give the elevator picture of your podcast, who you guys are, before we jump into it.
Yeah. So our podcast, we decided to talk about like media as a way to talk about trauma because we started out our TikTok journeys kind of almost at the same time, talking about our family trauma, talking about our childhood trauma, and that's really actually what connected us. Shannon stepped in on my behalf when people were bullying me and stitched one of my videos and was like, "You guys are stupid. This is why. Okay, bye." So
The internet
yeah,
of
we
it
had
all,
this
yeah.
idea. Yeah,
I had
we
no,
had
and the funniest thing about that, I had no idea who she was. Like
yeah.
we had never spoken before. A video of hers went viral. You know, I don't know if you were on TikTok back then, but in 2021 there was this trend of boy moms being very inappropriate with their sons, where they were like,
Yeah,
sing
yeah,
our
I
theme
do
song
remember
as if
that.
they're yeah. And she made a video about that, saying like, don't make this isn't funny. Like this is like a serious thing that happens to people. And she went viral for that. And so I just followed her. And then like 2 weeks later, somebody was trying to tell her that abuse wasn't real. And so I like stitched her the way that you could back then, which was, like TikTok was so different back then. You couldn't really do that very well. But I just made a video being like, no, you're wrong. Like, stop talking. And that's how we became friends. I think that's the funniest thing ever, that it's like some crypto British woman left that comment, and that
Yeah.
so we became friends.
Yeah, and this podcast we tried to like do an iteration of it before where it was more general, but like we had some editing snafus and dropped that idea for a second until like Shannon actually was like, "Hey, have you watched the Jackson's show? It's like actually really good." And so we decided we would watch that and cover that together.
It was like it's all of our special interests in one place.
Yes.
Let's just do that.
I love that. I think especially because like you never know, one hate comment could lead to A podcast and a friendship.
Pretty much.
Yeah, this is definitely a much better way to talk about this stuff if you are ever going to try, because talking about we learned that on the first couple years we were friends. It's absolutely horrific trying to talk about yourself and like trauma stuff, just yourself
Mhm,
online. Every person who's done it, who used to do it when we first started, doesn't really do it anymore because
Mm.
it's just too hard.
mhm,
And with this kind of stuff, nobody except for us really knows what we're actually talking about when we talk about things, because we don't have to say where we got this information from. We can just talk about it.
mhm,
Yeah. I think that's a really great way of thinking about it. I think for me personally, it's like I use like storytelling a lot to like kind of work through emotions. Script writing is like a big thing for me, and like analysis, because like you know, TV characters, literature, can be a lens into people's lives way more than like people realize. And like,
mhm,
oh, for a lot of people, it's through television, it's through media where it's the first time that they might realize something is going on, or, might connect something to them that they didn't realize was also them. So I think it's a really cool way of doing that. Really quick before we get into more of the episode of it all, you mentioned some of your hyperfixations. You guys also do a lot of like classics and cover, I think particularly Greek mythology, but like mythology and things of that nature.
mhm.
So I was wondering, what is your favorite? Like, do you have a favorite or like a list?
That's a dangerous question, mythologically speaking, because that's what started the Trojan War. Um, yeah, so I mean, this is the part of our background I haven't explained yet, is I got my degree in Latin and Greek, and so I'm an actual legit classics major, and it's always given me like kind of a weird like Percy Jackson relationship, because a lot of people in the classic space are like, that's not real mythology, and he changed so much. And then, yeah, and then the other side, it's like, no, when you look at the spirit of what mythology is supposed to do, actually, this is a great continuation of it. Um, but yeah, like when it comes to myths, it's hard to pick a favorite. It really is. And this, so many people get pedantic. This isn't Greek mythology. I love anything Ovid. Ovid's a
Mm.
Roman author, and he's where we got a lot of our knowledge of Greek myths. Um, Man studied in Athens, so I like to say that he probably knows more about Greek mythology than all the people who say, "Oh, but he's Roman," you know? Um, yeah, but I'm gonna just say the whole Metamorphoses just to piss
Okay.
people off.
That is really good. I think the sum up for us, I guess, is mine is, Medusa. And hers, the unpopular version, is the myth that I like for that, and Mandy likes the unpopular version for the Persephone myth. And I think that's funny because if you don't know anything about either one of us, you can figure out our trauma just from those myths that we have.
Hmm.
As someone who only took one, I laugh because as someone who took one Greek mythology class, it's like, yeah, I guess, yeah, I can see. It's really fun. I think it's a really interesting perspective of like, I don't really consider like Percy Jackson in the sense of like, I guess classics and the whole like, yeah, what's modern retellings of, mythology and lore and all that stuff. Because like, yeah, it's like hundreds of different versions, and everybody you learn, like, I don't think I
Hmm.
learned about like one of the I don't even want to be like the correct version, right? But like one of the versions that like most get from about Medusa, for example, until my mythology class. And this is new information. So
Hmm.
because I think I got a lot of my stuff when I think of like, I don't know, the high school, a lot of Greek classics. I think we did the Odyssey.
I don't know if my school was different, but we did Greek and Roman mythology in like 10th, 11th grade, or not 10th, 11th grade, when I was 10 or 11. Like how you hear kids now, they use Percy Jackson in schools to teach them at that
Yeah.
age. But this was before that existed. I am old. That was in 1995 and 1996. When I did it back then, we watched the Odyssey TV movie
Oh,
where
wow.
like Vanessa, whatever her name is Calypso, and I still remember that movie, and for me, remembering my childhood, that is like, it shows how much I liked it, that I remember it
Mhm.
at all. It means that I really liked it. But there was like nothing like Greek mythology related. I watched the horrible Troy movie 9 million times when that came out when I was in like the end of high school for me, because it was like the only thing. It was that and Gladiator, which is like Roman serious mythology, but I watched those movies over and over and over again when I was like the beginning part of my college time, because I always liked it, but there was like nothing. There was nothing. I think
Yeah.
Rick's definitely changed a lot of that for people. That it's become a lot more accessible over the last 20 years. It wasn't just him, but he definitely had a big influence in people feeling like they can go into these stories and adapt them however they want.
Yeah, I realized, like, I feel like a lot of these, like, because I feel like this year in particular, like 2026 is like the big year of like the Greek Roman retellings. You got the Odyssey coming out, Percy Jackson, of course, was a television show. Yeah, I didn't really consider because like I think I started reading Percy Jackson right when the book The Last Olympian dropped. So that would be 2010. And it's funny, I was like, I started reading Percy Jackson before the actors who are now playing them were born.
Yeah,
Or the
Wow.
year after they
same.
were born. Yeah.
Isn't that weird to think about?
Yeah,
I don't
like we
like thinking
found
about
we're kind of older in this space. So I'm turning 36 this year and Shannon's about to turn 41. So
Yeah.
we're older in this space. I was either graduating high school or just graduated high school when I read them. Got introduced by an ex-boyfriend who looks crazy similar to Walker. And I didn't ever go on to read past the first 5 books because there was a bad breakup with that relationship. So part of me
Fair.
was like salty over this thing reminds me of him.
Yeah, and the way I got into them was, I think it was 2010 when the movie came out. I
Oh
heard
yeah,
of
that
the
was amazing.
movie. That was back when Twitter was like much smaller. And so people on Twitter were talking. I saw people on Twitter disappointed in the movie, and I saw people talking about like how well the author wasn't involved. So that's probably why the movie was so bad, whatever. But I had this thing back then that I felt like I always wanted to read the book before I saw like the movie for whatever it was. It was Greek mythology, so I wanted to see it. And so I was just at the bookstore one day when I went to work earlier than I thought I had to go, and saw the book sitting there on like the little shelf of like things that were just turned into a movie. And so I read the first, I don't know, 20, 30 pages of The Lightning Thief. And I remember like literally like putting the book down and staring at it like, this book just did everything I wanted Harry Potter to do that it's never done, ever, in the first 20 pages of this first book. And I was like, are you kidding me? And I bought the book that day and the second one, and then spent the next like probably 6 months to a year like reading them. I tried to space them out so that they would last. And then when the Heroes of Olympus, that was like right around the time when the Heroes of Olympus books
Yeah.
eventually started coming out. And so then when I literally read The Last Olympian in one 12-hour setting. And so I was 25 or something when I read the books for the first time. So it definitely wasn't like the normal audience or anything, but it did all these things that nothing else was ever doing. And so I was like, oh, I love these books. Um, and so I just wanted to read all of them. I waited longer to finish Blood of Olympus because I thought that that was going to be the last book with Percy ever. And it made me
Mhm.
really sad to imagine never getting a book with him again. And it was the last book with him in it for a really long time. Um, he wrote all these other books after that, and but most people thought that that was going to be it when that book was coming out. So I waited until like 2017 to actually read it because I didn't want it to be over. I didn't know what was about to happen. Like I can remember being on TikTok. No, I remember being on Twitter in 2020 and seeing Rick in the middle of all of this like literal horror of COVID suddenly post in the middle of that they were going to make a TV show on Disney and that him and Becky were going to be involved, and I was like, what? Like this is a
Mhm.
reason to try to survive COVID. Like,
Yes.
because that's something to look forward to, but it was like the one good thing that happened that entire year.
Yeah, it's so funny. Like I think that's so cool how like everybody's kind of picked up these books in like different points of their life. It was like when they kind of sometimes when you needed it the most, sometimes when it's just like the thing to read. Because I think you guys said that you're gonna eventually cover the Heroes of Olympus books on your podcast. So
Mhm.
I'm not going to because there's a particular like canon event that everybody kind of experiences when they open up the Lost Hero that I'm gonna let you have and report back to.
Yeah, I've gotten the
She knows
spoiler,
about it.
unfortunately. Yeah, so for me, it's going to be first time reading the books, but like being in this fandom space, it's kind of hard to avoid the spoilers, so it happens.
I do find it interesting, and I think in the grand scheme of things, until the show, it seems like after it felt like a lot of those characters got put more into fandom situations and like fan fictions and stuff like that than the OG characters from the original series, which I thought was really interesting until
Mhm.
recently. And then everybody's like, why are we doing this? I'm trying to keep it as big as possible.
Mhm.
I honestly have not read them in a very long time, so it probably also for me needs to do a reread. But also because I think they're more diverse, we got to the point where like we're kind of out of the 2000s and like most of the
Mhm.
characters being white, and like a lot of the Heroes of Olympus characters are explicitly different races and ethnicities and have different backstories, so that could also be another thing with it. But yeah, it was something I found interesting.
Mhm.
Mhm. I guess the best way to put in perspective those books that we brought up before is that Nico comes out as being gay in those books before gay
Yeah.
marriage was legal.
Mhm.
Like
Yeah, oh my
the
god, I
book
didn't
where
even
that
consider
came
that. Yeah.
the book where that came out was a year before gay marriage was legal. I remember
Yeah.
loving that so much at the time that he made a child, and the youngest one out of the entire group, the one that people still don't do that now, and have like a 14-year-old child realize that and be like, I've always known this, I just didn't tell any of you. Kind
Mhm.
of storyline like his was. So that was a really big deal back then, because yeah, that came out way before it was even legal for people to get married. It's so weird to
That's
remember
so
that stuff
weird to think
now,
about
because
that. That was like
but that was only 11
yeah.
years ago when they made that legal.
Oh my
Like
god.
that was the best Pride ever. It because it
Oh,
happened
that was
during
during Pride.
yeah, it happened during Pride, and so people at Pride that year were running around with like "I just got married" like banners and stuff on them, and everyone was just coming up and hugging them because everyone was so happy.
That's
Mhm.
so cute. All I remember from that is that I found out in a car on Twitter on the way to, I think, like my family used to travel up and down to Connecticut. I think we were going for like a family reunion or something. And that's how I found out. I was like, oh, y'all, they approved gay marriage. Everybody's like, cool. I think the White House tweeted it or something. And that's how I
Yeah,
just.
I think it was like Obama's like Twitter account just put out like the official press release and then like a statement because that was back when presidents used to do nice things like that.
Yeah, yeah. Back before it wasn't a
Before the
national
bad
security
times.
risk. Yeah, it's fine. It's fine. We're doing so great right now. Going into first, let's talk about episode 6 just a little bit.
Mhm.
Considering last week for me personally, I took off, but like what was like I think for me episode 6 was one of my favorites of the season, but I'm really interested in you guys' overall thoughts on it.
Um,
Um, like a good place to start is the praise for Walker because
Oh yeah.
poor kid had to act from the crack in a wall and he pulled it off. He pulled it off. So, big kudos to him for that. Also love that literally everybody gets to go through that captain's choice moment, in episode 6. So we have Clarice once again deciding, okay, the fleece can either save Annabeth or it can save Camp. And she's like, I'm saving Camp this time. She chooses the bigger choice. And then we have Tyson makes a choice in that episode because he sees Luke getting away with Annabeth and he has to decide, do I go after Luke or do I go after everybody that's in there? Percy has to make the decision with the fleece as well. So, like, all of them have their little moment of like make or break, make a decision.
and one thing from that episode I really liked, because I really liked that episode overall, but the way that they are depicting Clarice, I really like
Mhm.
overall in this season because she still has the same flaws as the character in the books. Like she still in this episode is not wanting to use it, but because they focus on her perspective, you understand why she feels like that. Like, even though she had the polar opposite opinion of what I wanted her to do, I still was not mad at her at all for thinking that because of what just happened to her ship. I can understand why she wouldn't want to do that again, that she'd be afraid of something like that happening all over again. And so if that had happened at the beginning of the season, everyone would have been like wanting to punch her in the face or something. We would have been really mad. But because we got her perspective, you understand completely where she's coming from. And she still has
Mm-hmm.
the same flaws and everything that she had before. It's just that you understand why she has them now, in a way that didn't come across as much in the books. That was really nice.
We've talked
Yeah.
about like the choice with Polyphemus a few times, like back when we were reading it. But with Polyphemus, the choice to make him clever and to have him be like a step ahead of Grover was really interesting and honestly very good because similar to how Percy Jackson is told from Percy's skewed perspective, the Odyssey's told, or the Polyphemus story specifically of the Odyssey is told from Odysseus's perspective. And if you read it, the way that I liken it is to ethnographies from like colonials, where they're like, oh, these native people, they don't till their land. They don't have farms the way that we do. They don't have the same plants. They must be uncivilized. And so part of me always was like, okay, but they're clearly an agrarian society. Like we have a bunch of shepherds there. They all somewhat get along because Polyphemus feels like he can call to the other Cyclopes, even though he's like the smallest and weakest one out of them. Um, so they can't be that uncivilized. And so for them to turn it on its head and be like, no, they're actually really, really clever. And
Mhm.
he can be a step ahead because now he's got that trauma from Odysseus, that nobody trauma, where he's like, I don't want these heroes to get one on me again.
Yeah, we really liked how they did that. I don't think you can have a character like Tyson on the
Mm.
show and show like he's intelligent. He has his own opinions about things, his own personality, his own like set of morals. He can strategize and all this kind of stuff. It would feel really gross to me if they would have been like, "Oh, Tyson's the only like special Cyclops like that." No, that absolutely no, don't do that. And so I'm sure that's why they didn't do that. And it was interesting, like in the episode when Luke pops in, he says like, "Oh, this Cyclops is different. It's not as like I forget the way he phrased it, but he's like, it's not like the other ones. He's actually more
Yeah.
intelligent." And I was like, "You're just ableist," because that's what that reminds me of anyway. Of like that sort of belief of like you're good, like the good disabled person. Everyone else is somehow less than, but you're not sort of idea. And so it was really fun to see them have Polyphemus be like that because yeah, Odysseus in the original story is just judging him because he's just in his way, and it's like, what do you mean you're mad at him because he like showed up at your house, and you showed up at his house and was like, I'm waiting for you to come home and then steal your food. Be like, what do
No,
you what
they started eating what was on the table first, but they also killed two of his sheep. So yeah, Polyphemus was like, you kill my sheep, you take my food, and
They
then
even
you
say
want me to
hi
treat you like a
first.
guest? Yeah,
and then
no,
he
screw that.
and then he blinds him, and it's like, what? And so one of the things we
Mhm.
always liked about the books so far, really the Percy Jackson books, like the first five, is that they usually show how Percy is different from the heroes of the original stories, and this one definitely showed how he wasn't anything like Odysseus, because I felt like this episode really showed like how Odysseus did that because he felt like he needed to for the good of everyone or something, and just
Mhm.
thought that that was the only way to do it. And look at all these people that have been harmed for thousands of years because he did that on that one day. If he would have just figured out another way that wasn't just brute force over somebody that he thought he was smarter than, maybe none of this would have ever happened.
Mhm.
Yeah. It's like their original plan was to just get them out and leave. Like they weren't
Mhm.
planning on trying to fight him. They were like maybe distract him. just so that they can get, well, when they find out also Clarice, but Grover and the Fleece, and just like get off the island. That was their overall goal. They were trying to minimize harm as much as they did. And I feel like a big thing was them is nobody hurt anybody until they absolutely had to.
Yeah.
So even like Annabeth strike didn't strike him until it got to a point where she was like, oh, he's about to eat. Tyson didn't, tackle him until he realized that it was either them or him. So
Yeah. Like they even have Tyson literally tell him, like, I don't want to hurt you. Please don't make me hurt you. And he's like, no. And so then he has no choice. But yeah, I really like that about that episode.
I think for me, the episode made me want to crochet a sheep hat, but also like it balanced the perfect sense of like this like action stakes and also like the humor of it all, because that's what kind of Percy Jackson is, right? Like it's like these action stakes, but also they're like 13, 14. So there's going to be things that are chaotic, like him landing in Clarice's arms. But then you also have Percy fighting for his life through a little tiny crack because he sees Luke stepping to Annabeth. And Annabeth is just like KO'd on the corner, again, doing something that she kind of figured. And I thought also going into like the fatal flaws coming into play, like you said, like everybody's fatal flaw came out in that Percy completely zoning out, which, oh, he's going to be so annoying next season
Yeah,
to
well,
everybody in his existence.
we have to admit our non-canon stance here, which is we
Yes.
don't believe the gods that loyalty is his fatal flaw. And there's multiple times we see this come up. So, like, you know, for them to say, oh, you would completely destroy Olympus for somebody you love. Well, he leaves Sally in the underworld in the first one. Coming up in Titan's Curse, there's multiple moments where he sees Annabeth, like being tied up, doesn't do anything. In this episode, or not this episode, but Ep.7, he sees Annabeth tied to a bed, leaves her there to go retrieve the fleece. The man does not drop the mission as much as he wants to for the people he loves. He wants to, but
Oh,
it's
he
the
wants
thing
to
he
so
has
bad,
to
yeah.
grapple with. And so I don't necessarily see him giving the fleece as like, I'm willing to throw away the entire mission. I think part of him was like, this is fixable. Like this thing that I'm doing right now could potentially be fixed. We can get it back some other way. But like right now, Annabeth needs this.
That's why we were talking about the stuff with Odysseus. To us, it felt like backwards to show how Odysseus affected everything for so long because of what he did to Polyphemus, and then act like Percy was in the wrong for not being willing to let somebody who's 13 years old just die. Like, that is not something that should ever happen. Like, I know this is just like but I think this is the correct stance, that if a child has to die in order for you to succeed, you should lose.
Yeah.
That is not something that I think is up for debate. And so we talked a lot in our episode about, like, I am genuinely so confused about why people think this is a fatal flaw. I know why Athena thinks it's a fatal flaw. Why would I care what the gods think? Like, generally, why? They want their kids to obey them, so they would see Percy being loyal to his own people instead of them as a flaw. We don't. So why do we think that's a flaw of his? Especially when it never leads to, like, self-destructive things. Like, letting Annabeth die there was never going to be the right move. Like we saw in the next episode, they get it back. Like, it doesn't end there. They can get it back. And I understand that the show obviously wants us to think that, but that's just not something that either one of us can really figure out how it works with his character.
I think for me, I see it as, I don't know, it's something that I still think I have to think about a lot, but like I see more of his flaw being more so empathy but it can also be a strength, right? I think all their fatal flaws also are strengths, right? Because like even Annabeth's, which is like uh, I don't remember exactly the words, but like of like, thinking she's too smart for her own good, her pride. That can help her in some cases, but I think if it's just treated, I think there's a balance, and I think that's what more so the show's trying to portray. That's why I see it's something that I really have to like sit and think about, especially when it comes to like, because you guys make up valid points of like, you shouldn't have to, but
Yeah.
like, it's one
Yeah.
of those things of like, I don't know, fandom discussions are always very interesting because like, it's always one way or the highway a lot of the times. And it's like, you
Hmm.
got to think of different perspectives of like anything and
Yeah.
everything, right?
And I guess just to say like what we think his fatal flaw is, we keep changing the word because we can't think of a good word to describe it. But to me, it's like that kind of self-destruction where you feel like the only thing that you offer people is what you can do for them. And
Mhm.
so, though, like a friend of mine gave a good example of like in the fifth episode, his fatal flaw wasn't to her. She doesn't think it's loyalty either. She thought that it was when he goes in to talk to Cersei that his fatal flaw is him like sacrificing himself, like telling
Yeah,
Cersei like
yeah.
I'll stay here with you, and that like even fits like when we get to episode 7, his last scene, the look on his face when they're talking about Thalia coming back, like he thinks that, and that is a general theme in the books, that especially when you get to like the later on books, he feels like all he can offer people is what he can do as like the
Mhm.
prophecy kid. And so he thinks like if I don't do these things for these people, then why would they want me around? And so a lot of the stuff with Thalia is like if Thalia is here, they can just replace me and I don't have like a place because he doesn't understand that they like him for him, and
Mm,
it's not because of what he can do for people. He doesn't get that yet because he's a traumatized child. But like
Yeah.
that's what we thought it was, and it's so it comes out in similar ways, I guess, on the show is like the loyalty thing. So it like mostly fits where we don't feel like we're going against what the show says most of the time, with that stuff. But that's how
Mhm.
we see it anyway. Is him just feeling like he needs to do these things because that's all his friends like why they're around is because he can do these things to help them.
Yeah, and I would even say being loyal to a person, like what they're describing doesn't even fit that because, like, for example, if I were to die, I know that my husband would not suddenly go and change his whole moral ethos and do something that I would be against. Like
Hmm.
he knows I would come back and be his sleep paralysis demon and he would never get away with it, right? In a similar way, I do think deep down Percy knows like if it's somebody I love or like everybody screwed, unfortunately, like I'm gonna try my best to do both, but it's I have to do what's going to be the choice I can live with.
Usually, if somebody tells him like I don't want you to do this or I want you to back off or whatever, he's like okay. Like he
Mm,
like lets Nico run around out there by himself homeless for a long time and doesn't even try to
yeah.
force him to come back to camp. Even in like the Heroes of Olympus books, Nico isn't really at camp and he's not forcing him to come and be there and stuff. He's just trusting him to figure it out. And so that's more his style of trusting people to figure stuff out eventually. And if they need him, he'll
Mhm.
pop up and help them.
no, of course, we have to give a shout out to Rainbow and the other hippocampi who make their appearance at the end. Even though
Wait, before we
everybody,
move on from 6, did you
yes,
catch the detail? So Polyphemus, when Grover's talking to him, he's saying like, "How did you know to use the fleece that it would give off the same scent as Pan?" He's like, "Who do you think gave it to me?" I'm so curious how that's gonna come up when we actually meet Pan when we get to season 4.
I have seen, I can't take credit for this because this was not me at all, but I've seen somebody say that what if they go back there because that's the entrance to the labyrinth?
I mean, it could be one. There's
It could
many,
be, but there's
so
Yeah.
multiple, so I wouldn't be surprised if that's where, the things that occur because that's a whole, oh my God, season 4, just thinking about it and the fact that it probably is going to happen and like seeing book 4 on the screen is so crazy. But
So
like,
probably
yeah,
start so probably start filming that in August.
yeah, yeah. I wouldn't be surprised if after in the next 2 weeks we get that season renewal. Particularly this episode 7 we have arrived at has been quite the interesting. I think it's only been, as we're recording this, 24 hours.
Mhm.
And the discourse that has come from this episode is so interesting to me. Just I think, the best place to start this is, I think, the main ghost of this season, Thalia, and the dream that
Mhm.
Annabeth has, or nightmare, per se, where we start off with her remembering the aftermath of what happened with Thalia in the tree. We don't
Yeah.
know exactly what happened yet.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, well, so my impression reading the books was always that Thalia was transformed at some point while she was dying. Like, I don't think she was completely dead yet. I think whatever life force she had may have just been given to the tree, right? And so for me, this wasn't a huge leap, because I always was like, nah, she had to have still been alive in there. Like, that just makes sense. Like there has to have been something of her that was still alive within that tree. It's just transformed. And the reveal happening earlier is interesting. The fact that Annabeth is fully aware this is going to happen. Like everybody's fully aware this is going to happen now. Um, it it's interesting. And also, like, when you couple that with Percy's dream from episode 6, where he sees her come in as a figure that everybody thought was Kronos when they were looking at the, like, teaser trailer back in the day. Um, it's they're definitely presenting us with the danger that her fatal flaw being loyalty, like we're gonna go with our fan theory, um, that it's going to be the potential reason that she joins Kronos in the way that everybody seems to think would happen with Percy.
Mm-hmm. I wasn't one that was upset or anything like that about them bringing up Thalia coming back early or anything like that. Um, One thing I've thought was fun about how they set up this season is that there's certain things that they like use from that fans would know, and they like kind of
Mm,
put it into the show. Like I really liked how the sirens episode, that the entire episode was about the sirens, because they had to know
Mhm.
going into that episode that that's all the fans would be thinking about, and so they made the entire plot of the entire episode all about the sirens to build into like that anticipation. Like the characters in the show also have the anticipation for them running into them. I thought that that was smart, because it's like they know we're all going to be thinking about that anyway. Might as well just like put that into the literal plot so it's not
Mhm.
distracting. Percy and Annabeth are both afraid of what will happen in some way, shape, or form when she comes back. Percy had a dream of him standing around dead children, in a way that I didn't think that those kids were dead when we saw that. I thought that they were sleeping, and so with her around, and so they are anticipating it. I don't know what to think about how they brought it up in this specific way, because I feel like they brought it up this way for Luke, and I don't like
hmm.
that. I don't like how they brought it up in the way that they did for him, in a way that didn't happen the way that I thought would happen. Um, but I don't have a problem in general with them knowing about it beforehand. It just makes the fight that we know happens in the next episode more like anxious, knowing that that's going on in the background the whole time, and it just will help build up like the tension, I think, overall when people watch it.
Yeah, I agree. I think it was one of those things where I I hate that I'm like a both sides person, right? Because like it gets me into trouble so many times. It's a trait of mine that is both very good, but it can, I guess, fatal flaw of the sorts. God, going into that, but like I wasn't personally bothered by it because I realized that I had similar feelings of where are they going with this with season 1, episode 7, because that was my least favorite of last season. So I was like, but then the finale ended up being one of my top. So I was like, okay, I understand. I was like, I'm going to choose to trust the process because, and then of course, after I watched the episode at 6 a.m., it's the only time to do it when you're working a 9 to 5, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or like after work. But like, I was like, okay, wait, what if, and I'll go into this a little bit more, like, we are putting more emphasis on what truly happened to Dahlia of some sort. Because both, I find it interesting that I guess I assumed that Luke was at least there when it happened. So the fact that Luke and Annabeth weren't there and it was just Dahlia does make me have questions on what took place, to the point of like, all right, what did the gods do to manipulate the situation? Because I feel like that's all they kind of want to do, right? Is to manipulate the situation for their benefit and not, the benefit of their children, right? Never can do that.
Yeah, like this one's definitely being presented in a way where, like, I had always imagined Thalia turning into a tree as Zeus working from on high because,
Yeah.
like for example, the Daphne and Apollo story, that transformation story, like Daphne doesn't die, she's running away from Apollo, who's being very overzealous, towards like pursuing her, but she's scared, and so Zeus turns her into a tree, but he's not physically present, and so. I always kind of just equated those two because it's like the only other turning into a tree that comes to mind immediately. And figured, well, Zeus might have done this from afar, but
Yeah.
everybody just knows it was him. And the show was kind of giving us the impression, especially knowing Courtney Vance was already casted, that like he's going to be physically present for this. And so how does he get presented to her? Does she know that like, hey, I can turn you into a tree and you can protect all of camp so you don't have to actually die, or what?
Yeah.
Hmm.
And I mean, I guess, like, is it one of those things where she had agency in that choice, or did she not? Because I think that plays into a lot of next season, whether or not if
Hmm.
she had that agency. And I think that's a really interesting twist of the sorts if that is the case. But, like, also, and like her being able to tell her story, because like if she didn't have agency in that, like it's like great, the gods doing something else to make sure that they don't die, but everybody else but their kids have to suffer. I think we talked a little bit about it, and I think we gotta rip the band-aid off with the whole
Yeah.
Luke of it all, because he's in this episode quite
Yeah.
a bit. And Luke's biggest hater squad assembled.
Yeah, it's been a bad couple weeks to be a Luke hater, between him getting the fleece and during the whole like I'm gonna save Annabeth, to be honest, because we're such big Luke haters, we didn't believe anything that he said while he
That's
was
fair.
negotiating with Percy.
I
But
don't even fully
yeah,
believe that Annabeth was gonna die. I think he
yeah.
was
I
lying.
think she was knocked out. I think she was knocked out
I
at
think he would
least. He
I
did check her pulse.
Yeah, but I
I
was
give
like,
him that.
I think he might have been like the thing I said was I could see him jumping to that conclusion after Thalia died, thinking maybe the same thing
Yeah.
was going to happen, but because of how weirdly like excited he got when Percy was like, we can use the fleece to heal her, and suddenly became about that more than anything else. Um, it just felt like he might have started exaggerating a little bit more to get because earlier in that episode, the whole Iris message thing, I was like, you want to steal this girl. Like, you think that if you get her alone, that she will join you. You want to steal this literal child because you think that Percy is the only thing stopping her from joining you. This is pretty clear from how you're talking to her so differently than how you talk to her when Percy's around. That's what I figured would happen. In this episode, I am still so like confused about this episode. To me felt like the perfect chance for them to have Luke give Annabeth like his kind of like pitch to get her to join him, and they talked about that in like interviews and things like that. Like Charlie talked about that idea, and so I thought that's what this episode was going to be, was him doing that, but instead it was all focused on him being as innocent as humanly possible. And I really didn't appreciate that.
Yeah.
It was very weird. That's why I honestly don't know what to think about this episode, because every single storyline, you can tell from when they wrote this, every single storyline was centered on how to make you feel bad for Luke and how to have him not be responsible for anything that he's doing. And so I don't know what to think about anything, because I'm like, this makes me so uncomfortable that this was clearly like the thing that they were trying to do. And I understand that they clearly feel like you need to be conflicted about what side you should be on. I don't think you need to be that conflicted in order for it to be a good story, but they clearly do with the way that they set that up in this episode. Like, I don't know what they're even going to do now in the next episode. I have no idea, and not in like a fun way. Like, I don't know what they're going to do now.
Yeah, like to kind of frame this in like the way that we talk about things with trauma and stuff, there was already a problem with Luke sympathizers in the fandom. Like,
I
you
mean, yeah.
didn't need to do all this extra stuff to make
No.
people on his side because, yes, the gods are shitty parents. And even Percy says it multiple times. But, um, like even today we were in the comments with somebody like talking about, well, that wasn't apparent enough in the books. Are you kidding? He says a lot of the same things that Luke says. He says he's angry. He says he feels ignored and neglected the same way that Luke does. I think the thing that's rubbing us the most wrong is the fact that Kronos seems to physically like actually have an effect on him, that he seems to be
Mm,
physically torturing him. And that gives him a bigger out than just, the dreams, the nightmares and stuff, because Percy gets those too. But he's able to just like, okay, but I'm not listening to you. I don't want to do the things that you would want me to do. Um, and so now if Luke's getting physically tortured, it's a little too sympathetic for us.
Yeah.
no,
That
yeah,
that was
okay.
the
I
that
see
was the
that.
big problem I had with the ending scene was I was like, you're literally removing any culpability, responsibility, any word you want to use there that he has for his actions. That scene overall was very like I've been trying to explain this, like the relationship between Kronos and Luke in the books is very much like an abusive grooming dynamic.
Yeah.
But they made it so like over the top in this episode that in a way that took away all of like the nuance
Mm,
in the story. And I'm like, you don't need it to be this over the top for this. Like, the story was already there, it was already good, and it was actually like how real, relationships like that happen. That is similar to how those relationships actually do happen, but it was just everything with the story was set up as a way to like give him an out. Like, even when he stabs Percy, but he
yeah,
stabs him in a
straight
way
up.
where he is immediately fine, to the point that Percy never even tells anybody else what happened. And so I'm like, I don't understand why that scene happened, because he fixed himself. It was scary, obviously, seeing Percy be stabbed like that and be bleeding like that, but he was immediately fixed, to the point that he never told any of the other characters on screen what even happened. Like, it was very sweet to see him hiding it from Tyson and his mom, because he knew it would make them upset to see it. But they're like making jokes about how he's was bleeding but isn't anymore. And they can like put it together that Luke is the one that did it to him, since he has the fleece and everything. But I just that was kind of like the point of that happening, at least in the books, was to show like how far Luke will go. But it doesn't
Yeah.
feel as real when it's immediately fixed right afterwards. I wanted to ask you what you thought of, since you love Annabeth, obviously, what you thought of him being like. It seemed like from the end of the episode that you're supposed to think that the reason why he will turn against them now is because Annabeth lied to him. And I was like, this is absurd that he is this upset about Annabeth lying to him when he lied to her for literally years of her life every single day. But the way that it happens in the episode, it made it feel like that was supposed to be like a definitive thing for him. And I guess I'm just wondering what your. It just made me feel
Mm.
weird that it feels like to the idea of thinking that Annabeth and Percy trusting each other is somehow the reason why he would turn against them. It just doesn't feel nice.
That Luke Annabeth scene was really interesting to me. First, I will say, just like compliment sandwich. I think Leah and Charlie acted their asses off in that scene, particularly. I think it showcased to me two very damaged people. I did also think that that scene was going to be him more so trying to recruit her and like understand what Annabeth was trying to do was more so distract him, I think, if anything else, while Percy ran to get the fleece because like at that point she's freed, she can leave. I mean, I I think of the little details of like Luke not even noticing, like if he looked a little bit closer, Annabeth clearly was free. Like she clearly could walk out of there at that moment. I think he knows that he's alive. Cool, good, but like he's not like, I don't want to say concerned about her well-being because I think he wants to make sure she's at least alive, but he's not paying attention to her as much, because he doesn't have that grasp. I don't think it's a series of like Annabeth plus trusting Percy more, but more so that she does not have the hold that he had on her before, I would say even season, like right before the betrayal in season 1 when she was there, right? Like
Hmm.
even at the beginning of season 2 in episode 3, he speaks to her differently. Uh she still has this, she'll forever have that hope, and that's what a lot of it drives her and Percy apart and later and moves forward with later story arcs. But like I think it's the first time Luke is really realizing that he doesn't have a hold on her as much as he did anymore, and that she can say no to him. And I don't think he's had someone say no to him in a very long time.
Yeah, and the episode's still so close that we're still like sorting how we feel about it. And of
Yeah.
course, like part of us wants to like, okay, what's going to happen in episode 8? Is that going to somehow like fix this even a little bit? There's still that hope for us too. It's just I I don't love that this is giving the Luke apologists more to work with.
Yeah.
Way more.
Yeah.
In this day of age of fascism, like, I'm just saying, like, because I don't think we're supposed to be a black and white situation where it's either you work on behalf of the gods or you work on behalf of Kronos. Like, Percy very much, and, especially show Percy is like, I am Sally Jackson's son, like acknowledging the human parts of him so much more. I do think that when people get black and white about the Luke apologist thing in a way, they have to make Percy a worse person in order to make Luke feel like a better one. And so that's where you get the fandom saying things like Percy would join Kronos' side in the drop of a hat if this happened, or if this happened differently, or this happened differently. And I don't see that in him. I don't. I do think he is a justice loving man. I do think that he has too high of a justice sensitivity for him ever to be on the side where he has to kill innocent people. It's just how I read him.
I really hate when people bring that up because it feels insulting to people who have gone through things like that, like Percy has. Be like, do you think I'm a bad person? I'm
Mhm.
not. And part of it with people like me anyway is like I had somebody like that. Like I had somebody who's just as horrible as Kronos was, if not worse, honestly. Luke is so wrapped up in like the rage of wanting to get back at the people that hurt him, and he like can't see anything else. But I can't see Percy ever becoming somebody that is so wrapped up in rage that he could ever even like entertain those kind of thoughts. Like that's why one thing from this episode I really liked is when Kronos is trying to tempt him and he's not tempted whatsoever. And I was like, yeah, that's
Mhm.
absolutely correct. He would not, it doesn't matter that Kronos just told him the prophecy. He doesn't even necessarily want to know what it is exactly. He trusts that other people will tell him when he needs to know. But he just played along with his game long enough for him to just steal the fleece because I'm like, I'm not tempted. He's not going to be tempted to join him just because he's like, people lied to you. Percy already told Hermes in the second episode, you're lying to me right now. And I know you are because this is how the gods work. They always lie. Like he knows that they're lying to
Mhm.
him. He doesn't care. I think it's always interesting how people really, really, truly in like their heart of hearts want them to be like two sides of the same coin. I feel like I should make that like a trigger phrase of mine at this point of how often I see people saying that about them. And that's one of those things I don't get because they make polar opposite decisions in their lives at every single moment. Even their moms do. Their moms made polar opposite decisions too. Like Sally, you know, just tried to be there for Percy but didn't try to control everything. Luke's mom wanted to be able to control his fate in some way, which is why that happened to her in the first place.
Luke and Percy in the same coin, I think, is one of those themes that we've seen throughout this season, but I think it's both true and not true at the same time. Like Percy and Luke are very different people, and how they take the things that they went through, and like you pointing out you know, Sally and May in their situations and how they turn out, um, is a really good example of that. I don't think Percy at the drop of a hat would do what Luke kind of did, and I'm really interested to see how they wrap it up. But I think one note from this episode in particular that even with like the ending, and I think a lot of the issues that I think comes with this episode is its runtime. It's
Mm-hmm.
30
Yes.
minutes. I think a scene after that, or a little bit more space to breathe in some of the things that we've seen in the episode. Even Percy being like to Annabeth, okay, so this is what happened, or more of the aftermath of after, Luke went through Atlas Chronos at the end, or like more of a breathing space, right? Because I think because we got all these things happening in like the last 5 minutes, there
Mm-hmm.
was no room for anything to personally breathe. Um, Other than to just set up for what's gonna happen in the finale. And I think that's just like a big testament to like why I personally think, and I think most people are saying, that the episodes need to be longer, and
Mm-hmm.
that character moments, I think, in this particular season, which are good, can be drawn out more and drawn out better for that nuance. I wish we got a little bit more of like Luke being more like, all right, here's my PowerPoint presentation of why I think you should join. Not in the sense, but but
Mm-hmm.
in like showing more of that nuance by
I don't know. It's more just I don't think this man needed to be more sympathetic. I really don't. Like, we get
No.
it. The gods are bad parents. We agree. We agree. But that doesn't mean you go around killing your demigod friends.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
really hope that we get, particularly next episode. Luke has not said out loud yet that he is willing to kill children.
Yeah, he's
I hope
all
we
done everything but
like
that.
the Camp Half Blood dummies in the back, giving very, I don't know if you guys seen the Divergent movie, giving very much,
Mm-hmm.
why
Mm-hmm.
are we in a training ground at this cruise ship? Like, also the idea, Kronos's and Luke's, like their idea of this perfect world doesn't include mortals.
Nope.
No.
They're going to kill them more. Like, and these are things that haven't been really brought up yet. So I really hope we sort of start to slowly see, or just see more of like what Luke is willing to do. I get the reaction, but I was like, because I feel like if I see Luke kill somebody, I'm gonna be like, all right, we're back in business.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, you don't need to do all this for what, a headache. Get over it. I get migraines all the time. Get over it.
Or even just permanent consequences would be fine. We know that Percy gets hurt in the next episode in some way, so that seems like permanent
Mm,
consequences. But it's just like something more permanent that can't be immediately fixed. If they do that kind of stuff, but I'm hoping in the next episode that, because they mentioned it, showing like Chris Rodriguez and the other girl from the Athena cabin that they had in the second episode that is in like the
yeah.
the preview. I'm hoping that like some of the reasons why they end up getting hurt and why Percy gets so hurt. A friend of ours brought this up to me the other day, that in the beginning of the season, in episode 1, Annabeth says that she had a dream about camp being on fire. It could be about the finale episode of camp being on fire. And they thought that it was about the Lastragonians in the first episode, but it could be happening now. So I do hope that they
Mhm.
bring in like Chris Rodriguez and the other people that could be like spies of Luke's, and that messing up them winning, because it would. And
Mhm.
it just made me think that they literally showed us Annabeth letting somebody in when she's already okay to be at camp, and letting other outsider people in that technically aren't supposed to be there. And so it makes me think, like, what if like Chris or that other girl or both or other people like run off during the battle and let some of Luke's people in, and that leads to them getting so hurt. That would be
Yeah.
permanent consequences. So in this episode, they just mention offhand that iris messaging isn't working.
Mhm.
Oh,
And
yeah.
so I was wondering if either of you had any ideas about what that could be or why. we heard like the people on Luke's team, they were saying that they thought that it could be Zeus trying to turn it off because Luke just used it in the last episode, and so maybe they thought that he was just turning it off for everybody because he was mad that they were using it for something. Um, I thought that was funny. That part was funny of them, of the one being like, "Don't talk about Zeus. I'm scared of him," and things like that. But that is something new. And also, Annabeth's hat is still in Luke's room,
Yeah.
Yeah, the
and so
Annabeth
it's
hat
like,
of it
oh
all.
god, that's terrifying to think about Luke or anyone else on his team being able to sneak in anywhere. And so I feel like those two things are somehow connected, and I don't know how.
All right. I'm rechecking Iris's parentage because let's
I
see.
joked on Twitter and was like,
If
God
she would
forbid
be.
Iris wanted to take a break, a vacation.
Yeah. Well,
Like, for once, everybody keeps calling her.
yeah, I just had to double check that she's not a child of Zeus, but like she's
Okay.
not. She might be more Titan era, even like a child of Titans. But
Oh.
with
Oh.
her, I think because she seems to be impartial. The fact that they said we're using Iris messages, that's probably why Zeus shut it all down. I believe them actually. I believe the kids that like they're on to something. Zeus was like, okay, if this is how you guys are messaging each other, like when you're not with me, we're turning this off. You know, the monsters
Time
aren't gonna
out.
go after them anyways, so they could theoretically use cell phones when you think about it, because the whole reason that the other demigods don't is because it's like monster bait.
Yeah.
And
Mm-hmm.
so, yeah, they could theoretically go back to cell phones and texting. Why are you using Iris?
Because the only reason why Luke uses Iris is to communicate with. It makes me also wonder where they're communicating with spies at
Yeah,
Yeah.
camp, because that's the only reason, other than Annabeth, who wouldn't have a cell phone. Like, the only other people that they would probably contact is like people on the inside.
The what is her name? Bronte. I feel maybe Bronte is like a stand-in for now for Selena. Um,
I don't think so. I have a running theory. I have a very delusional running theory that it's incredibly delusional that, like, we are either going to get the first instance of her, or we're going to get Selena coming into camp, and this is like the battle's kind of how she sneaks in, because she's, my god, this is such a, I should probably say a major book spoiler alert, because
yeah.
it's one to make your plot twist. But like, so like skip like a minute. Yeah, but Selena being, the spy is like,
mhm.
they have to establish her early. So if she's like, oh my God, I decided to join Luke's, y'all, I don't like Luke's side anymore, or whatever, or she appears during the battle when everybody's like busy, right? They're
Hmm.
like sending the troop. But at the same time, I guess like book readers would know, but like they would have to make it so like show fans wouldn't know,
Mhm.
Hmm.
or they twist it on its head and have us know the entire time she is. So we're like sympathetic towards her. I don't know.
When I say
I don't
like
know.
Selena stand-in, what I mean is establishing the fact that there could be somebody being a
Oh
mole,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
and then so that when it's her later on, it's easier for them to introduce the idea of that happening at all. And so I that's what I mean by that. I don't think that she's taking her place or anything like that.
Oh, okay.
It's just more of introducing the idea, that the concept that Luke is using people inside camp and getting them to tell him things, and that getting that, just introducing that concept, so then later on it's way easier for them to introduce Selena in like what I would imagine in like season 4 or something, that storyline, since that's the season that's all about saving camp again. We know from Luke obviously doesn't care about what happens to his spies or anything like that. And
No.
so if they introduce that now and it shows like what can happen to them in a negative way, then it makes you immediately afraid for her as soon as she shows up, and they don't have to like do all this work to introduce the story like they did in the books.
Yeah.
That's what I think about, because I thought maybe Allison would be somebody like that, but honestly, Allison at this point I feel like is someone there just to make you feel bad for Luke.
I no,
Her
I
her
I need
like
somebody to beat Elsa.
everything she said to Luke in this episode, I was like, yeah, she's right. Like, I don't understand why she's the one saying this. She's right. Like, Annabeth is the enemy.
In an episode that Allison feels like, because Luke has to be, because I think we know that Luke has to kind of be at least a little bit charismatic for him to have the sympathizers that he has, to him to have the support he has. Like, he can't be an Allison, right? Like, in just realistically, he can't show his face to the world like that, and not get support. I think I equated Allison to being Luke's anger translator.
Yeah, that was a good point.
Yeah, I think it's so interesting that, like, Allison in particular, my first thoughts when how I interpret how she said, like, Annabeth drew me off the boat. Annabeth didn't draw her off. Her force of herself drew her off the boat. She fell off the boat.
Yes.
And Annabeth didn't make the bomb. Tyson did. So it made me be like, you just have beef with Annabeth.
Exactly. Like, she's weirdly jealous of this child.
I feel like if Percy and Annabeth were both there, it would be just Annabeth.
Yeah.
You said that, where she's his anger translator.
Anger translator, yeah.
That does make sense a lot for her. And I guess that was part of the thing that threw me off about this latest episode, is I thought we would see a little bit more of the process of Luke deciding, like, okay, I don't want to try to recruit these kids anymore. Now I'm going to just try to take them out. And so I was surprised that we didn't see more of that. I feel like that's some of the stuff that got, like, cut from scenes and things like that. Because this season is about the Odyssey, one thing that Mandy and I talk about is how the Odyssey is about you becoming a leader. And so everything that Allison does, I always have seen that as, like, a reflection of what Luke is like as a leader. That, like, she thinks that killing Percy and Annabeth in the third episode is going to be something that Luke would just get over and be fine with. But she thinks that that's how she can, like, move up the ranks in his organization, is by killing 2 13-year-old children. And so everything mean she says, I take that as, like, a reflection on the environment that he kind of creates. And so that's what I want it to be when I think about her, because it's just the Odyssey is so much about, like, what it means to be a leader. We see Percy becoming one with the scenes that we've seen already in trailers and stuff for the next episode, where he is trying to make camp believe that they can take on, like, adults that are former campers that are coming back just to hurt them, and that they can actually, like, beat them and things like that. And they obviously believe him by the end of that speech, but that's him trying to, like, take control of being a leader in this world, of being this prophesized kid or something. I'm honestly curious about what they're going to do with, like, whatever kind of leadership they think is going on in like that last episode with Luke.
Yeah, because especially since we know Clarice is taking a different way back to camp. So who knows if she gets there before them, if she gets there after them, like, how that dynamic is going to go.
Yeah, because one thing that was different from the books that obviously I'm fine with is that they're already in Long Island. They're not in Miami.
That makes sense to me, honestly.
I know when they said, like, welcome to Long Island, I was like, oh my God, they're so close to camp. They can get there so easily. What's going on? Why are you here? Like, this is an entire ship. I'm scared now that his entire army is here and just ready to show up at camp. And
how is Luke's army getting there? That's the question. Do they got trucks?
They got Uber.
Yeah, something like that.
That was one of the I did a video, or we talked about this in one of our other YouTube videos at some point, about how all the kids are basically homeless when they're on quests, and that's what this reminded me of I wasn't homeless when I was, like, in middle school and stuff. When my dad was around, my sister and I just, like, wouldn't go home. When my mom was working, go to, like, the library, and we would go to, like, a bookstore. We would sit at the grocery store she worked at for, like, 6 hours and eat their food, and they wouldn't kick us out. We didn't pay for that. But it just reminded me of those times where the kids were trying to figure out how to get to camp when they don't have a cell phone. They don't have any money, so they can't find a way. They don't know how to drive because none of them are old enough. And it's just like, that's how hard it is to get around when you don't have money and you don't have a car.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
I love that their solution was let's call Sally.
Yeah. So let's call the person, that
Yes.
girl,
and
Sally
like
Jackson.
not even their solution. Tyson's
Yes,
like, I
Tyson's
don't
just
know what
like,
to do.
hey.
Let me call my mom.
Yeah.
Me in every situation, I don't know what to do. I'm calling my mom.
And then Tyson is adorable when he's on the phone and he's like trying to talk to her without telling her anything, because I think he's thinking while he's on the phone, like, I don't want to get Percy in trouble. What do I say? Because that's one of those things that we talked about when we were reading the book. So we always wonder, like, there's no possible way that Sally actually knows what happens on all of these
No.
quests, because she would be so terrified if she did.
Yeah.
And so I remember a friend of ours, Ashley, once said to me that she thought that Percy told her like the titles of the chapters, that's like the
Pretty
stuff
much.
that he would tell his mom
Oh, that's
to make it
interesting.
not sound not that bad. And I'm like, actually, you know what? I accept this as my headcanon. And
Yeah.
so
No,
I'm
that makes
glad.
sense. That makes sense.
Yeah, I liked how in this episode they showed her like them knowing they need her help, but having no idea how to ask for it without having to tell her that they haven't been at camp this whole time, and they almost died like 6 different times, and and all these bad things have happened until she's just like, I am a mother. The best thing about that scene with Sally in the deli is if you look at the deli worker's face.
Yeah. He
He's
was
just
like,
looking at her like, you're a mom to a cyclops?
Yeah.
Mom, you're the mom that stepped up, but to what?
He just is looking at, like, I remember so many times hearing the weirdest like fragments of conversations when I worked at a grocery store deli for like 8 years, and you would hear like the most emphatic arguments for like 20 seconds at a time and just be like, what's going on? Like what's
Yeah.
going on in that person's life? And then they would just walk away and
Yeah.
you never knew what actually happened.
Me and my husband always reference and they were roommates. Like when we
Oh,
start
and they
hearing
were
a very,
roommates.
yeah,
Yeah.
we'll just say that when we're like, hey, did you actually hear that like conversation really quick? That's like our signal to each other.
And they were roommates. Yeah, I worked at I worked retail in high school. I worked at Brookstone, and it was so interesting. Like the massage chair place, I like to call it, in the mall. But I find it so interesting, like the little things about people's lives that you would learn just from like ringing them up. And I'm just like, I don't need to know this.
Yeah.
Or just like I'd be like talking to people about a product and they'll give me their whole backstory. And I'm like, do you want to buy the clock or not? I just, why are you telling me about your trip to Scotland or like something along those lines? So, yeah, you overhear you learn a lot, just like like a lot of screenwriters like people watch, so they'll like go to coffee shops when they work and stuff like that. And then we do notice that there might be a tease, probably a tease to
Or
Paul.
Paul. Yeah.
Um, especially Percy being like, whose car is this?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I didn't clock it until after. I was like, oh, Sally's a teacher now. That's so cool. And I was like, wait, oh, Percy interrupted her couples weekend. That's so rude.
He doesn't know that he
Honestly,
is
yeah.
yet.
At first, I was almost thinking, did Tyson just like hotwire another car?
Yeah.
Like,
Mhm.
what? How did they get this car? But then it was like, okay, but then how did Sally get there? Yeah, when the fandom was all like clocking that, I was just like, okay, yeah, this was our little hint that they're giving us a little Paul glimpse.
That which it makes sense because we first get introduced to Paul in the next season. But
Mhm.
like,
Yeah.
so I'm like,
Paul
yeah,
is
I always did wonder their timeline.
Paul is so funny because like I'm very understandable with all of like the not main characters. I can understand, like, I know how TV shows work and how they can't really justify casting somebody unless they really have like the space for that person and things like that. But Paul is the one character that was like, give me Paul. I deserve to get Paul. I have the worst daddy issues on the planet. Give me Paul. Let me cry watching him be an actual dad to Percy. Please, for the love of God. That is, I just want a good dad one time. This is the only time. He's the only time in the
He
history of Percy
is.
Jackson where he's a good dad. He's it. That's it. It's Paul. So can we please have Paul?
I'm like
Yeah,
trying to
like-
think of like any of the because even like next season, I was talking to somebody
Frederick.
online and they were like, "Oh my god," because the Annabeth casting dropped with Frederick
Yeah.
Chase, and so he's like, "Oh my god, he's always plays such good TV dads," and I said, "Oh, you haven't read the books. I'm gonna hold my hand when I say this to you.
Mhm.
Just don't expect him to be the best."
Yeah.
He's not. I don't. Frederick Chase is when I catch him in these because he's
every time there's a new character that's introduced and their dad is horrible, which is like every character, I'm
Yeah.
always like, Rick, do I need to hunt down your dad? Like, what's going on here? Like, there are no good dads anywhere. None.
I'm like trying like other than Paul. I'm like I feel like there's somebody somebody in the comments is gonna be like, yeah. I'm like, no, I don't like none of the gods.
No.
Maybe you know what?
Leo's dad is
Maybe
around.
in some regards, Mr.
I'm-
D is the only one I could argue.
Maybe, yeah.
Maybe.
I like Chiron, and so I say that Chiron.
Yeah, and Chiron. Like I feel
dad.
like maybe them. Like
And
Chiron was the dad that stepped up for Annabeth
Yeah.
and like some of the campers. Was his methods the best? No.
This is like my whole spiel about Chiron is this is like us bringing like our trauma stuff in. Chiron plays this very difficult role that needs to exist, where he's the in-between person, where he deals with the abusive people and the things that they would say normally to their kids. Because he's there, he takes those things in and then talks to the kids about certain things. And so if he wasn't there, it would be a lot worse. And you kind of need somebody there, and he has to make these difficult choices, but he very clearly sees it as his responsibility to try to help them as much as they can in this environment that isn't meant for them to be happy in. And so I always defend him because he is that like person that if the kids are upset that their parents are around it or because they have to do these quests, he is the one that has to tell them that they have to do all these things. And so because of that, he is a good person for them to feel angry at and for the fandom to feel angry at. But this is something that happens when you get older, is you realize like he was dealing with a lot too and was trying. And a lot of the stuff at camp that does end up happening is because he forces them to. That's why I thought it was interesting that some of the book purist people were mad because they didn't give the same reason about why he wasn't at camp at the beginning of the season. And I was like, Zeus wants him gone immediately because he actually makes him do things for the kids here to take care of them. He doesn't want to actually do any of that. Like, it's just because Chiron's there. They were looking for he would be looking for any reason to get rid of him. And like, let's think about abusive people, like all of the gods. Nothing that Chiron says is necessarily like true. He's saying it because he has to keep the peace with the gods and everything. And so he says like, oh, Zeus was this amazing person that showed up and saved her from this fate and made her a tree so that you guys would have protection because he's so amazing and he's so wonderful.
It's like he's reading a script.
Yeah, and he's so awesome. And, like,
and he's check
and
notes.
like me looking at that, especially in this context, thinking about it, I was like, he either bullied Zeus into doing it or Zeus was going to do something worse and was like, you have to do something for these kids at this camp or all of them are going to be dead. And made him do something and just played it off like, isn't Zeus amazing? Even though he was the reason why it all happened. That's what I mean by like Chiron is like that person that has to play that in-between role with, you need people like that to kind of stay in there and just make abusive people like that back down sometimes or get them to do things that they don't want to do. And so I feel like that might be why he's there, because Chiron is there. He would run out and try to help them and try to help
He would,
her.
especially if he knew it was a high profile kid. Like Percy, he was at that school for months with him before he made his way to Camp Half-Blood. So like if he knew it was a forbidden child, he would 100% be like, oh my god, she's finally coming. Let me be on alert.
And he wouldn't just sit there and just like be like, yeah, you can handle the Furies. I'm sure it's going to be
single-handedly.
Yeah, like he would. So I think there's really an interesting thing, and I really hope we dive into that, like, that we get into that next episode, that both Chiron and Zeus are black. So, and
Yeah.
Dahlia and Annabeth are black. So, sadly, go into the end of this. But
Yeah.
I do want to give a brief shout out to the reveal of our favorite horse, or
Yes.
Pegasus,
Blackjack.
Blackjack, who made his official, he was there before, but made his official debut in this episode. Blackjack, we love you. We appreciate you. Thought it was really interesting. I thought it was really cool, fun twist to have Clarice fly on Blackjack instead of on a
Mhm.
plane. That makes sense to me, actually.
I also
Um,
like that you
but
can't hear Blackjack.
mm,
I like that you can't hear him. I think it's more fun that you can't. And that means that Walker gets to ad-lib stuff in season 3 when Walker or when Blackjack is more around, since he takes him to like even join the quest
yeah.
in Titan's Curse and stuff. But I feel like it's more fun for the actors if we can't hear what he's saying, because then they can just respond however they feel like.
Yeah. I mean, that is a good point. It's just like because he has so much conversation with Blackjack, if they do leave that in, they might have to give him a voice for the next one, even though they
Or do
didn't
what they
now.
did with the guinea pigs and have at least like
Subtitles.
captions.
Oh yeah, yeah, I'll take Blackjack subtitles.
Guinea pig
I like
captions.
Blackjack sassing him. So that's my only
Yes.
thing was like, I like the idea of Blackjack like sassing him.
Hmm.
I just think of like, imagine like Titan's Curse, where they were filming at that one wherever they were filming, where people kept seeing them. But I'm just like picturing a scene where Percy gets to like where the quest is, but he hasn't seen anybody yet, and you just cut to a scene of Percy standing there giving his horse a box of donuts. And anyone who hasn't read the books before would be like, why does he have donuts? Why is he giving them to a horse? Like, what's going on? I almost like want them to not explain everything, even though they have to make the story work. But that stuff is just some of the funny stuff that I imagine them putting in there, and people who haven't read the books before being like, "Why does the horse eat donuts?"
Because he loves like that's his thing. It's so yeah,
Yes.
Blackjack is great. I'm very excited. I also do hope we get more shots of because we get it sort of with like Clarice and Annabeth being like, "What do you mean that's your friend?" and "What do you mean his name is Blackjack?" But um, of him like talking to Blackjack and like
Mhm.
you get an outside perspective of it's like, what's going on over there? Actually, like, are
Yeah.
you okay? Because they
Percy
get
just
into some like
collects. Percy just collects
arguments.
animals that he's friends with everywhere he goes.
He does, because doesn't like he also he's able to talk to the fish and stuff too.
Hmm.
Hmm.
Yeah, the fish come to him for their problems. I think that was either in the beginning of Titan's Curse or like afterwards. Like they just come. Oh, it is Titan's
Bessie,
Curse. Sorry, spoilers. Because yeah, that's how he finds Bessie. Is that
Bessie.
fish come to him and are like, "Hey, so somebody's in trouble. Help!"
There's an animal in trouble.
I'm so happy that we might get to see Zeus's face when he hears Percy call Bessie Bessie and be like,
Oh my
He's
god.
like,
"How did you name him? Why did you name him Bessie? Because he's a cute little sea cow."
they're like, are you serious? But I also, yeah, because he would say that. I think it'd be really funny. Some I forgot where I heard this, but somebody was like, nature documentaries with Percy are probably the worst because he
Mhm.
can understand everything.
Oh
I've
my
Or
read
gosh.
like
Yeah.
those Siu document. Oh God.
I've read like 5 different Percy Paul fan fictions that are Percy telling Paul what all the animals are saying in like the ocean documentaries that they have on TV, and Paul being like scandalized because he's like, they just keep talking about sex a lot. And but that is definitely a
Yeah.
fanfiction trope, and I love it because it's adorable hearing, and it's literally like a bonding activity that people have just made into fanfiction of
No, that's fair.
Paul asking him like, what are they talking about?
Never go to an aquarium with him. It's kind
Oh
of
my
over for
gosh.
Yeah.
you.
It'd be
You're never
loud for
leaving.
him. He'd just be
Yeah.
like overwhelmed with like everybody's
Yeah.
talking to me and asking me to free them right now.
Oh my
Yeah.
God. God forbid you show him Blackfish. It's kind of over for y'all.
I'm trying to think if there were any other nods to stuff that's going to happen in the future that were in this one besides that.
I like the charm speak mentioned
Oh yeah.
from
Yeah.
the
Aphrodite, Aiden.
yeah, Aiden. Yeah, that was really
Mhm.
fun to hear that. And I feel like somebody's gonna be like, here's a list of everything that you missed, and I'm not that person.
No, yeah, we're not that people either. Like
No.
it's mostly just like I said, the mention of Pan is one where I'm like
Yeah.
putting a bookmark on that one. I want to see how that comes back up later. And like was Sally legitimately on a date? That would be an interesting one to figure out
I think she
later.
was on a couple weekend. I do think
Yeah.
she was on a couple. She was
Because
getting
wasn't
dinner.
she in Montauk? Like I think there was a
Yeah.
sign that said "Welcome to Montauk" somewhere.
Hmm. It's
I
the
think she was on a
summertime.
couples weekend, and she took his car.
It's the summertime, so they would both be on like break from school and stuff.
Yeah.
Um,
They were at
'cause-
camp all summer.
yep.
Hmm. Yeah, she just thought she was getting rid of both of her surrogate children. Yeah, that actually makes sense.
Yeah.
I guess getting into the closing of it, I'm curious of what's one thing you think might happen in this finale? I feel like book and show people alike are going into this going, we kind of know what's going on, but we have no idea what's going on.
Hmm.
Yeah, yeah, it's so hard to say because like I do think the demigods at this current stage are not well matched against Luke's
Yeah,
army, even
yeah.
even though his army's growing. And I don't know, maybe this is potentially a lead in to the fact that because I think was it season 3 or it's Titan's Curse where like the very beginning of the book starts out with him saying Grover's been gone again because Grover was out recruiting other demigods. We lost a bunch of demigods and lost is the wording used in there, but that we don't know whether that means they died, they went to Luke's side, they decided to run away
I
from
think
everything
that is book
altogether.
4 when that starts
Well,
because
that
he comes back.
they talk about in the beginning of Titan's Curse too that
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Percy's
Yeah.
talking about it because they're explaining like why it's so important for them to get Nico and Bianca because
Right,
they've been
right.
using demigods, and the way he says it makes me feel like what he means is that people are joining Luke, and
Hmm.
so they feel like morale
They
is
need to
low.
get to them
Yeah,
first.
and so like they're trying to get to Nico and Bianca before Luke shows up and takes them first. Um and safely get them back to camp and things like that. And so I do just wonder the most about the people, like part of me worries almost that somebody that we kind of like is going to end up being a spy. um I guess the one thing I'll say is that I don't want Allison to die. Her
Mm.
character is very intriguing to me because she is a brand new character that doesn't exist in the books, and so we never have any idea what she could be doing. And I don't want to lose like that kind of like access to Luke's side through like her perspective. Like it's interesting for me to think like will she stay as hardcore for Kronos as the years go on, or will she start questioning things as things get more like severe and intense and things like that as they get closer to like the prophecy happening. And so I don't want her to die exactly. I don't know what she would exactly do in the other seasons because there isn't a whole lot of Luke in that way, at least if they keep it like close to like what the book is. You don't really see him because they don't want to show Annabeth. Um, and so you don't see them very much in Titan's Curse, but I just almost like don't want to give in the I don't want a character like her from the Apollo cabin when the Apollo cabin has so many people in it and
Mm.
so many of them die in the last Olympian that a 13-year-old is left being in charge of the cabin because everyone else is dead. Like they lose the most people, and so thinking about her being on the other side, when that sort of thing is going on, when that's her cabin, is just so interesting that I don't want to lose that yet. Um, Even though I
Yeah, but
don't know what the entails are.
that also means she would be there when Annabeth's captive, though. Like, and that makes me
Yeah.
feel uneasy too.
Would she? Or is
Well,
it I
I
Or
don't know.
would
They
she
might.
like be leading his army while they're both dealing with stuff?
Yeah, like
Yeah,
maybe out on assignment or something.
she
Yeah.
could be like, because I remember what I remember is that Luke is there holding her captive where Atlas and stuff is, and
Yeah.
then his ship is going all the way down and around and going back up to get to San Francisco.
Yeah.
So they could just have her be on like the ship taking care of that while he's with Annabeth terrorizing her and giving her more trauma. Um,
Oh gosh, yeah.
with Atlas and
Yeah.
stuff, I don't know. Like, I don't know how I'm gonna survive watching season 3 if knowing now that there's Atlas is gonna be in 6 episodes. Um, like you might as well just like put my dad's face on his face. They're the same. They're the
Ugh.
same person. It's generally terrifying. Like,
Zoe is gonna break our hearts.
yeah, Zoe
Oh
is
my
so much
God.
like.
When
There's so many
her
things with
casting
her.
happened
Yeah,
and
there's so
everybody
many.
started doing a quote.
Sarah, who plays Zoe,
Yeah.
posted something on her stories today of like posted a picture of like a notebook with like Zoe written on it, and I was like, I'm pretty sure that means you're dead, because they would be filming this kind of stuff right now. And I
That
was
means Luke is off a cliff.
Yes.
the best scene ever. I know everyone's so
Luke's
excited.
being thrown off a cliff right now.
I've been telling
Yeah.
I've been telling Mandy that like when that happens, there will be like edits I know on TikTok where it'll be like a 10-minute edit of just Luke being kicked off the cliff, just over and over on repeat.
Made by me.
Yeah.
Like,
Oh my
I'll
God.
make a couple. We'll make it like an hour long and post it on our
Hour-long
YouTube channel.
compilation.
Me like Luke getting kicked off the cliff for an hour
Melanated
long.
Wise Girl exclusive.
Yeah, at least for this season, there isn't somebody as bad as Atlas all the time.
Yeah.
But if he is going to be in 6 episodes like they said he would, that's going to be just horrible.
Yeah.
Oh God.
It's gonna be so yeah. The twist that like a lot of people are like, are they gonna have to increase the rating next season? I said, yeah. Yeah. I think they might fight for it.
One of the things I think is so funny, and that is not supposed to be funny, but I think it's funny, is when Thalia literally comes up to Percy and is like, "Can you talk to Zoe? She has too many feelings, and I don't know what to say." And I'm just like, that is so funny that she's like, "Can you make her stop crying because I can't do this?"
To tie it back to like this season a little bit, it's just we have heard the actor say multiple times that this last episode sets up Titan's curse a little bit better than the book does even. And so like yeah, we're prepared for a little mild emotional dysregulation after this.
They literally said that the end of this
Yeah.
episode would traumatize us.
Yeah.
Like
Well,
that's what Walker and Dior said. We kind of traumatize you at the end of episode 8. And I was like, okay. Okay.
yeah. Yeah. I usually ask people what their ratings for the episodes were, but I feel like we've gotten to the point where we're just like, we all just like don't like this episode. And
No.
that's okay.
Yeah,
At
we'll
least
let
now I
them keep
know.
cooking.
Now
Yeah, I mean, final takeaway for me is just I am gonna let them keep going with like whatever they're doing here. I've liked a good majority of all of the changes so far this season, and especially some of the character development we didn't get. It's just I personally did not need Luke to have more character development. That's just me though.
yeah, we're not the ones that are mad at changes. We usually defend all the changes they make, and so I just want the finale. The same person who wrote the season 1 finale is writing this one, and so the season 1 finale is like a work of art, and so I hope that this one is like
Yeah.
that too.
Yeah. Who was it? I don't know if I was on another podcast, but somebody was like, when the finale started off was Luke's voiceover of the Half-Blood, I was like, we're seated. This is gonna be fantastic. And they're like, I was already like, yeah. I'm like, nah, I'm a Luke hater, but I was like, oh, the way they're gonna bring in this plot twist is gonna be really, really good if they're starting with this. So I'm really interested to see how this season wraps up, especially them knowing when they were writing this that season 3 was probably happening. So, because they wrote season 1 not knowing if they're going to get a season 2, but they were writing season 2 knowing that they're probably getting a season 3 at least.
Yeah.
So I'm really interested to see how this all comes to. But yeah, sadly, we have gotten to the point where we do have to part. But before we do, please tell the people where they can find you guys if they want to listen to your podcast, if they want to hear more of your things.
Yeah, we are two wise girls on every platform, or our platforms together. We also have separate ones. I usually go by Mandy Musings on all platforms. And then I think you're currently Shenanigans and on everything too.
Yeah, we have podcast channels on Instagram, Threads, YouTube, Spotify, and TikTok now. And you can find us individually on TikTok too, if you want to hear us rant individually about things.
Yes.
Amazing, incredible. Thank you guys both so much for being on this podcast. I do very much appreciate it. And I'm really interested to go into this. Oh my God, we're here. The season we're here. We're at the season
made
finale. If you would like to follow the After Show podcast or any of my doings on social media, you can follow Melanated Wise Girl everywhere except on the Twitter platform. It's just Melon Wise Girl because of character limits. You can listen to this podcast on all the places that you stream podcasts and on YouTube at the Melanated Wise Girl YouTube channel. You can rate this podcast if you want, if you like me. And yeah, see you next week for the season finale of the Percy Jackson and Olympian season 2. Okay, bye.